Our guests live a life of meaning and purpose, making their dreams come true. That's what makes regular people exceptional. Become exceptional, become empowered. Hello, Sinead. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and I look forward to chatting with you.
Thank you so much. We have today Sinead Kane. Many of you would have known her because she's accomplished so many things, and we'll go to that in a minute. However, overall, she's so humble because I asked her, how will I introduce you, Sinead? And she said, oh, you said I'm an international keynote speaker and a disability advocate, as if nothing. However, the things that this woman has achieved are not remarkable. They are out of this world, completely out of this world. For your inspiration, Sinead, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for such a warm welcome, and hopefully the audience will like listening to my story.
I met Sinead a few years ago at a pendulum summit, and I approached her and I say, I have this idea of having a podcast. Would you come? And she just said yes. She knew me from nobody, and still she said yes. Not only that, she gave me a magazine that I'm showing here now, Sinead, for everybody to see. And you dedicated it to me, and you said, reach for the stars. Believe in yourself. Anything is possible. What you don't know is that this magazine has been on my desk ever since. And whenever I went through times that I deemed to be a bit tough, I went through these pages and I went through your message and I said, God, she had it way worse than me for many things. And still, look at her smile, look at her spirit, look at her strength, and look at her humbleness and love. So you have been with me for years now, Sinead. Know that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm not fully sure what to say. I'm glad I've inspired you and you inspire me, and happy that we met at the pendulum and that we got to speak and that we got to meet at pendulum again recently. It's good that we got to connect again.
Can you tell us about your journey to greatness?
My journey to greatness has been a very, very long road, and the journey to greatness for anybody will always encounter setbacks, roadblocks, hardship. And I think it's about how you react to that. If I can go back to, I suppose, the very beginning for listeners who don't know me, I'm Sinead and I was born visually impaired. I just have 5% vision, 4 eye conditions, aniridia, coloboma, nystagmus, glaucoma. And I suppose when I talk to a lot of people about resilience, mindset, teamwork, and for me, resilience really began when I was born, because I was born into a world that's not really made for disabled people. There is so much inaccessibility there. There's a lot of ableism there. Ableism would really be where people would say that the problem more lies with society and the barriers that society puts in place, as opposed to the problem being the disabled person. And I suppose that's how my first encounter with being resilient was when I was born. And I think you can either choose to be a victim to your disability or a victor. And it hasn't been easy. I suppose I discovered at age 4 I was visually impaired and I leant in too close to a TV screen. Yeah, then I realised that, okay, well, this is going to be the way it is always. I'm always going to have to look at things up close. I'm going to always have to be wearing sunglasses, using a magnifying glass. And when I went to school, I suppose I realised very quickly that I was different, because I was the only person wearing sunglasses inside, or I was the only person who maybe was falling over things, or if the teacher wrote something on the blackboard, I'd walk up to the blackboard to look at what was written, then walk back down again and write it down on my book. I quickly realised I was different, and I didn't really let it affect me that much. But then when other students started to see me as different, then that's when kind of problems started to develop, and bullying started, and the bullying was quite difficult to deal with, and that happened in primary school and in secondary school. And then I suppose at age 17, when I wanted to think about my future and what I was doing, I said it to my careers advisor teacher that I wanted to study law, and her attitude was, oh, well, law is a reading based subject, you'll never be able for it. And all throughout my life, I have been underestimated, people underestimating my ability. And it's not just even me, I see it in general with people with disabilities, people thinking that they're of no value, they can't contribute, that they just don't see the potential in them. And I think as well in the disabled community, sometimes they're either seen as super inspirational or seen as just can't contribute. I've kind of seen that a bit. I said yes to that. I wanted to pursue law, went on, did it, and qualified as a solicitor in 2009, Ireland's first visually impaired solicitor, and 2009. And again, when I was at the Law Society, I had to educate them about certain accommodations that I needed. And I think that's what being an advocate is. It's about educating yourself, educating people around you, trying to empower yourself and empower people around you. And after I qualified as a solicitor, again, I encountered different setbacks when I was trying to apply for jobs. Different solicitor companies would always see the white cane and the sunglasses before they actually saw my ability. I practiced as a solicitor for a small while, but then decided that I didn't want to do that anymore and embarked on a PhD. And I did that at DCU. The topic of my PhD was a secondary school teacher's duty of care inside and outside of school regarding bullying. I think when you're doing a PhD, it's not about an intelligence test, it's about a character test, because as you go on, you're getting feedback from your supervisor, and sometimes it might be feedback where you feel that it's critical and you have to decide for yourself, start saying, okay, well, is that valid criticism, or is this person just saying it just because they want to be critical? And in that moment as well, you have to start learning to have a voice. And I think all of our voices are important. You need to know when to use your voice. And some people I've seen, they'll just take on board what their PhD supervisor would say and then don't challenge it back. But I think that you should challenge it back if you truly believe that what's being said isn't valid, because then it even helps you when you go into your viva to defend your PhD. So I ended up getting I got actually an honorary PhD one, and then in the December then I got my academic PhD. The honorary PhD that I got in October 2017 was from the National University of Ireland. And that's just for all the kind of advocacy work that I've done in the area of law, even in 2007 and 2008, before I qualified as a solicitor. When I'd go into court, I would watch other solicitors and I'd see that the judge would say to the solicitor, right, quick, I need to know XYZ from a certain page of a book. And I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, what am I going to do in that scenario if I'm qualified as a solicitor and a judge is asking me to quickly find a page from a book, and I don't want that to kind of jeopardize my client or anything like that. I then decided, because I was actually working in the area of family law, and a lot of family law cases are in camera, I started researching about having maybe a personal assistant to go into a family law case, say, with me as a personal assistant, if the judge did say, oh, find a specific page in a book. And so I got that piece of legislation brought in under the Civil Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2008. So that allows a visually impaired or blind solicitor bring in an assistant to help them. Now, they don't interpret the law, they don't give an analysis of the law, but it's just a situation if a solicitor with a vision impairment needed to find a certain section of a book or something like that, then that they'd quickly do that then for them. I think that's one area of advocacy I've done. And then even I've learned more about sports law and sports advocacy through my actual running than actually through being a solicitor. Like, I've got policy changed nationally here in Ireland and internationally. I can talk a bit more about that if you want.
Please do. And I just wondered, how was the change? You were a family law solicitor, and then you started running all of a sudden.
No, well, I think like currently what my job is, I'm a keynote speaker nationally in Ireland, and I also go abroad to different countries. I've been to Spain and I've been to Portugal. I've been over to Boston giving a speech. I've been to Norway. I've been to Austria. Yeah, I've spoken in many different places, and I'm due to go to Switzerland later this month, and then next month I'm due to go to Germany. So I speak a lot. And yeah, so how did I get to that point? Well, basically when I qualified as a solicitor, I ended up working in the public sector for different voluntary contracts, doing the exact same job as a paid person, but just as a legal researcher for 6 months in Dublin. And then I ended up another legal researcher role, a paid role in Dublin as well. And I decided through that legal research that I actually then wanted to go on and pursue maybe the PhD, and I did that. And while I was doing my PhD 10 years ago now, actually, in 2012, I was asked to do a 10K for Child Vision National Education Centre for blind and visually impaired children. And I didn't have a clue what a 10K was. I'd never been involved in sport as a child. And I said yes to it. I set myself 2 goals, one to raise over €2,000 for them, and to do the 10K in under an hour. I achieved those 2 goals. I raised over the €3,000 for them, and I did the 10K in 55 minutes. And so following on from that, achieving those 2 goals, that grew my confidence. And then I joined a running club. And I suppose in that running club, I kind of felt they were a bit too overprotective. Oh, don't run too fast in case you fall and hurt yourself, and only stay in this lane. And I suppose I kind of felt like a caged animal. It was kind of like against my mindset of growth and wanting to constantly push myself. So I left that running club, and then I was having difficulties finding a guide runner. So I wasn't getting as much training done. So this was very early on in my running, back around 2012, 2013. And then I came across a guide runner, and I did my first half marathon in June 2014, and then ended up doing my first marathon in October 2014. And at the end of that marathon, the October 2014, I didn't actually feel like I had ran a marathon. I had set myself the goal of 4 hours, and I came in 4:01. Yeah, and I just didn't fully feel that I'd pushed myself enough. Like when I was walking around, I didn't have this soreness in my legs. And at the time, my guide runner, run coach John, he was pacing in the marathon that year, and he came over to me and he asked me, how did you go with your marathon? And I kind of said, well, I don't feel like I've even run a marathon. And he said, well, I think your talent lies in ultra running. And he suggested I do a 50K. And I asked him, well, what's a 50K? And he just said a small bit further than a marathon. Then I said to him, well, the logistics, who's going to run it with me? And then he said he would. So that was in the October 2014. And then in the February 2015, I did my first 50K in Donadee Forest Park. And I suppose to get a sense of what it was going to be like for me, John, who was guiding me, he actually went to the Donadee Forest Park. He got blindfolded and he got friends to guide him. And he said that it really did enhance his understanding of what it is like to be visually impaired, and the courage it takes to try and even run on a trail surface because of tree roots coming up through the ground, etc. And then I suppose following on from that 50K, then my running journey just developed. I tried to go into a race. They said that my guide runner couldn't go in because he was male. I advocated that that was wrong because they were saying that he had to be female. And so I tried to negotiate with them. And anyway, I got policy changed there. That was good. And then that was in Ireland. And then there was another race that I tried to go into. Actually, before I talk about that, then I ended up doing my first 12-hour track race in the July 2015, and I came second female in that race, and I actually broke the track record, and I was the only person there with a vision impairment. And a lot of people were kind of looking at me as if say, oh, look, the poor blind girl running around, which I kind of felt a bit insulted by. But then I let my actions speak louder than the words. By me standing on the podium showed that yes, I am a contender, I am a competitor. Just because I have a disability doesn't mean that I can't compete against you. So that was my 12-hour track race. Then following on from that a bit further, I tried to get into a race in Barcelona. It was a 24-hour race, and I was told by the race director that I wasn't allowed in because basically by me using a guide runner would mess up the race. And again, I challenged this race organizer in Barcelona. I got a solicitor involved. I ended up on Spanish TV and radio, and I was in the newspapers. And again, I didn't actually get to compete in that race because it just came too close to the race when a decision was made. And by that time, the desire to actually be at that race then had gone. But I'm glad that I got policy changed and that the local town council in the Barcelona have stated now that that race can't stop a person with a vision impairment going into that race again with a guide runner. And the laughable thing about that race at that time was anybody who was entering the race paid a fee. And that fee was going to a charity. And that particular year, the charity that this race director was giving the money to was a blind charity in Barcelona. But yet he was stopping me as a visually impaired person for entering the race. And the other thing about it is, if you actually compare my results that I was getting around that time and compare it to the results of competitors who had been in the race the year previous, then you would see that I was likely to be coming within the top 3, because my current result at that time would have meant that I should have been even coming second female. So it wasn't like I was just going there for a day out or to fill numbers. I was going there to be competitive. So that was disappointing, but I am glad that I got policy changed. And I think certain battles, you're not going to win all battles and you have to choose your battles. Again, another policy that I had to try and get changed is, so getting policy changed nationally here in Ireland and then internationally in Barcelona. And then a big situation came about in October 2019, where I had got the standard to compete at the 24-hour World Championships. And basically I was told by the IAU that I couldn't go into the race because the guide runner would be breaking an IAAF rule, which stated that no athlete was allowed outside assistance. I didn't agree with that, and so I challenged it and took a legal case, and the court in that scenario said I had been discriminated against under Article 14 of the European Convention of Human Rights, and I got to end up competing at the World Championships, and I ended up being a scorer for the women's Irish team. That case really, my running has brought me to complete highs, but it has also brought me to complete lows as well. And that case was quite difficult for me to deal with at the time. For me, sometimes the road to greatness can be a lonely one. And the reason why I say lonely is because people don't fully see rejection that you experience and the effects that it can have on you.
And why do you think that is? Is it because ignorance of people? Is it because they really don't know? Because they cannot walk in your slippers? Is it because they are scared of the unknown and they don't know how to deal with what's different? What do you think is behind it, Sinead?
I think we live in a world that the world is just made for able-bodied people, and if you're different then you're seen as a problem. And that's what I'm talking about with ableism, that the world is ableist, that everybody sees the disabled person as the problem rather than the society itself. And I lecture on disability law and policy through the Adult Education Centre at UCC, and teach about the different models of disability that has existed over the years, like the medical model, the charitable model, the social model, and the human rights model. I think some people are still stuck in this charitable medical model rather than coming on further and getting into the human rights model. I kind of think that even with diversity and inclusion in different companies, some people just tick a box and they're not actually fully implementing clear strategies to bring people with disabilities into their organization because they're fearful that people with disabilities don't have the proper skills or don't have the proper work ethic, despite people with disabilities probably working even harder than other people because they need to. Because, like, I organised an event there a good number of years ago to try and enhance people's understanding of people with disabilities in the legal profession. And the event was going quite well. And towards the end of the event, a lawyer stood up in the audience and said that his experience of dealing with people with disabilities was a negative one, and that's why he didn't want to employ people with disabilities. And I thanked him for giving his opinion, but I tried to explain to him that not all people with disabilities are the same, just like not all able-bodied people are the same, and that people with disabilities sometimes just need to be given that chance to show their skills, showcase their knowledge. As I say, to answer your question, why does discrimination exist? It shouldn't exist because there is so much education out there, there's so much awareness out there, but it still does happen. And that's because people are living in this fixed mindset of this is how it's done, this is the way it's always going to be done, and we're not changing.
I suppose that things could change a lot if we teach children in school so that discrimination shouldn't be an issue. And kids could say, well, it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, woman, man, something in the middle, you cannot see, you don't have legs. It doesn't really matter. Do you think that it would be in school where we could start?
I do think it's in school and at home that it does need to start. But, like, say, for example, my situation with that court case of having to take with the IAU, there you're dealing with a group of adults on a board who are not allowing you compete despite having the standard. And so in that situation, those people need to be coming more into line with the human rights model and realizing that people with disabilities have human rights and that there's laws there and that they need to educate themselves about laws. And same, for example, with companies, you need to start realizing that, like, that there's human rights for people with disabilities. So yes, we can do it from school age and from home and all that, but for current businesses and current organizations, they need to be coming more into line with the human rights model.
Yeah, we need to go from the top down and from the down top, from both sides until we get there to a point where we just don't see any disability. Because some disabilities you can see, but
Mhm.
some you cannot.
I think as
So,
well, we all have a role to play as well, and the cycle that's there, even the media, the film industry. Like, I have a lot of disabled friends who that film The Greatest Showman, um, and a lot of my friends who are disabled, they don't like that film, and they're quite critical of it because of how people with disabilities are portrayed in it. And then you've other people who are disabled and they actually look at the film and they think it's okay. I think some of the people who are disabled, the reason why they don't like it is because of just the way the people with disabilities are portrayed as freaks. Um, and and yeah, and so then when you're portraying people with disabilities as freaks and abnormal, that stays in the mind of people with disabilities. And then you wonder why in children with disabilities get bullied. And even like, it's even like, say, shows, like there's shows there called The Undateables. That again is instilling in the minds of able-bodied people that people with disabilities are undateable. When you have shows like that, yes, it's great entertainment for able-bodied people, and yes, the title is catchy, Undateables, but it's not doing anything for creating an inclusive society. And in terms of disability, I don't think people fully realise what it's like to have a disability unless you fully experience it. And why should people with why should able-bodied people care about disability? The reason why they should care is because anybody can end up with a disability through accident or illness. You don't just have to be born with it. I do think that schools are doing their best nowadays to try and educate around disability, but I also think that, like, adults need to show leadership as well. Yeah. And because children learn from role models of adults. And I suppose in terms of people with disabilities, they're like, we need more visibility in all sectors of society. So whether it's politics, whether it's business, whether it's sport, we need visible people out there advocating and being role models and trying to get education, awareness, and just visibility of the issues that are there.
You were talking about your voice, you were talking about resilience, about being a victor, not a victim, about how you felt that the first club that you joined was too protective. You were touching on all this, and I was thinking, where do you get all this strength? Do you get it at home? Were you born like that and you just came up like this, you popped out and you were this resilient, this strong, this victor mentality, or do you have to figure it all out by yourself?
I think it can be a bit of both. Like, I think you can be born resilient and have that innate personality, but I also think that resilience can be learned, practiced on a daily basis. And I think it's the experiences that you go through all throughout your life. I have experienced some very traumatic experiences throughout my life. I've also worked in various different charities throughout my life, where I've seen hardship, I've seen upset, and where empathy is really needed. In terms of being resilient, I think it's just your experiences that you experience throughout your life combined with your personality and your environment as well. I think for me, what inspires me to keep going and where do I draw that strength from? I think we all need to know our reason why, our purpose, and we'll all have this surface level reason why. But then when you dig much deeper, you'll find a different reason why. And I suppose the power is knowing that reason. Some people don't know that reason, and that deeper level reason why. And I do know that reason, and I never ever share that with anybody. I don't even share it with my family. So long as I know it, then it's personal to me, and that helps me get up and go. Like, I think as well in terms of discipline and resilience, like we can all set an alarm clock, but it's how we react to the alarm clock. Do we press the snooze, or do we actually get up and go? And that to me really is the discipline. That's really for me what discipline is, like how you react to the goals you set for yourself. And not every single day is easy for me. Not every day is a good day, but I try and find some sort of good in the day. And to do that, it's easier to be negative rather than positive. And that's why I try and fill my mind and my body, and I try and be conscious about my energy and who takes my energy from me and what gives me energy. And I think my greatest message for people today is to know thyself will help you do great things. Because if you know yourself, if you know what talents you have, if you know what skills you have, if you know about your personality, if you know what makes you tick or what makes you, drives you, if you know what agitates you, that really helps. Because then on the days when you're in bad mood, then you might say to yourself, well, I just do not want to be around anybody. But what I do know is that maybe if I go for a walk in nature, that will calm me down, that will help relieve stress. And so it's about knowing yourself. For me, I draw inspiration from nature, getting out into it. Some days just being by myself, listening to happy music, just being in control of my emotions. Like if I'm sad, just allowing myself feel that sadness and go through that sadness. But I think the main thing of it is not staying stuck in it. So acknowledging that, yes, I feel crap today and I feel angry or I feel frustrated, and okay, I'm just going to have a day out now today, or I'm going to have an hour out. But then it's your responsibility the following day to not stay stuck in that emotion, because not all of us will have the title of CEO. Not all of us will be a CEO of a company, but we can be a CEO of our life. And I think it's all of our responsibilities to take charge of our life, because who else is going to do it? The world will keep on moving, even if you're feeling upset. I also think that it's about showing leadership. It's great to show resilience, be out there and be inspiration and be very happy when everything is going right. But when things are going wrong, what leadership are you showing? And I don't think that you need a title or power to show leadership. You don't need a title or power to be a leader. Anybody can be a leader through our thoughts, our actions, and our behaviors. But as I say, not every day is easy for me. I know that by getting out into fresh air, if I'm feeling down or anything like that, that helps me a small bit. So I try and make a conscious effort to do that. And sometimes it's about just doing the most simplistic of things.
Yeah, to give yourself permission to whatever makes you tick. Wow, Sinead, I would be delighted to keep listening to you forever and ever. However, I'm conscious of your energy. I'm conscious of your time. We can leave the conversation now with a last tip if you want. A desire, if you had a magic wand, what would you like, for instance? What would you say to the magic wand or the genie in the lamp?
That's a very difficult thing, I suppose. A magic wand, I for the amount of things that I want to change, I need loads of magic wands. I think
That's
just
okay.
The main thing is that what I've learned throughout life is that you can keep pursuing degree after degree and title after title, and you can have loads of money and everything, but like the most important thing is actually just finding happiness. And I know that sounds so cliche, but that's what I have learned, that just being happy and finding people and things that make you happy is something that actually we can sometimes take for granted, and we don't realize it until actually those things are taken away from us. So just really finding things that make you happy. That's what I would want from a wish or from a magic wand. I would encourage everybody who's been listening today to choose to be visionary, not blind. That's easier said than done, because, as I say, that not every day is smooth sailing. I would encourage people to try and make a routine. It has to be your habits on a daily basis. Like for me, in terms of running now, when I go out running, each day it's like nearly a habit of brushing my teeth. I don't actually think about it anymore. And so for me, it's not only about the training for to be able to compete, but it's about getting the exercise and the headspace and the physical and mental health. So whatever goal that you want to achieve, you have to be hungry for it. You have to have it like a habit. You have to ask yourself the questions in terms of monitoring your progress. You have to be accountable. You have to ask yourself the hard questions. If something isn't working, why isn't it working? And is it because I'm not implementing the daily habits that I need to be implementing? And for me as well, consistency is a very big thing. Like every single night, I put in eye drops into my eyes to allow me keep the little bit of vision that I have. And even though it's a tiny eye drop, that consistency of doing that every single night is important. And so therefore, I would suggest to everybody to be consistent, even if it's only an eye drop amount in your life. So, whatever goal you're trying to achieve, to try and be an eye drop amount consistent with it. And as well, if you have a message for somebody, that message has to be relevant. If you have a goal, that goal has to be relevant to you. And how can you be relevant? Well, you be relevant through growing and through, I suppose, just challenging yourself and getting outside your comfort zone. Because if your goals don't scare you, then they're not big enough. And all of my goals always scare me. Going into a 24-hour race, no matter how many times I do it, I always feel scared. Courage has a ripple effect. And I think that when your goals scare you, you're showing courage. And when you show courage, you inspire those around you to be courageous. For example, I have a fear of heights, and I've worked a lot with a lot of different charities throughout my life over the last number of years, one being in particular Sight Savers Ireland. And the 13th of October is World Sight Day. And on that day, Sight Savers Ireland are going to be asking individuals and groups and businesses to try and raise money for their organisation. And then they encourage people to come and participate in an event that they have going, which is abseiling off the top of Croke Park. Yeah, so I have a fear of heights, and so I've agreed to be doing this, and this absolutely scares me. But I know through being outside my comfort zone that I'll grow as an individual. Because Sight Savers Ireland, what is their mission and their vision? Their mission and vision is to have a world where people who are going blind through avoidable blindness, that doesn't happen. So they want to prevent all avoidable blindness in the world. Another organisation that I've worked with has been Cleaners. And what the Cleaners Foundation does is that families who are going through a financial crisis and who are dealing with a child who has a life-limiting illness, they provide support for that family. And I suppose that's why I enjoy working with these organisations, because they're very clear on their vision and their mission and their desire to help people and impact people's lives. Another organisation that I work with is Able Vision Ireland. And Able Vision Ireland is a media and training company for persons with intellectual disabilities. And through that organisation, they empower people with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, to have the skills to film, to create documentaries, etc. And I find that extremely inspiring to see when people empower other people and when people are giving skills to other people. They're just some of the organisations I work with. Able Vision Ireland, Cleana's, Sight Savers Ireland, worked with the Irish Guide Dogs as well, NCBI. And so I enjoy working different organisations who are empowering others and making an impact in other people's lives. And I think if you stay in the group of people that you just know, and if you're around the same people, the same places all the time, I don't think you actually grow. And that's why, I suppose, as I say, my message would be to go out and experience life, to be around people who are different to you, to be in different places, to experience different cultures and to try different things. And it's through those experiences of different cultures, different places, different activities, and meeting different people that you will learn so much about empathy, leadership, so much about the world around you that any textbook could ever teach you about resilience.
You left me speechless, Sinead, because what you're saying is inspiring, and at the same time is so doable, because we can all go out there and meet somebody that we haven't met in the past. We can all go online and find some organization that we can join, even if it's just for a weekend. We can all do a small thing. We can all put that little drop a night. We can take one step at a time.
You can break things down. Like when I did my treadmill record, the furthest distance for any female on a treadmill in 12 hours, which is 130.50 kilometers. Like when I was to step onto the treadmill for the 12 hours, I just felt overwhelmed and daunted. Again, as I say, your goals need to scare you. When I stepped on the treadmill and said to myself, okay, I'm going to be on this treadmill now, running for the next 12 hours, I felt scared and I just felt too overwhelmed. And so I broke it down into bite-sized chunks. And for me, like, I only thought about the first 4 hours. And after that, I just wasn't going to think about anything else after that. And even in the final hour of the treadmill, I couldn't tell you who was in the room. And the reason, now I know lots of people were in the room, and I couldn't fully see because of my eyesight, but I couldn't tell you who was in the room because I was so focused. And you need relentless, intense focus when you're trying to achieve a specific goal. And in that last hour, I was so focused because I said, do not mess this up now in this last hour. Do not be showboating, do not be looking around to see who's here, because if you come off the treadmill and if your feet come off the belt and the belt is still moving, then basically then you're kind of disqualified then, because I did Guinness World Record adjudicator there watching, and the belt can't be moving if your feet are off it. So so I didn't want to mess it up in the last hour, and that's why you have to be so focused. As I say, I just would encourage everybody to try and be their best version of themselves and to learn about themselves and to fill their minds with energy each day, and the responsibility lies with you. You are the CEO of your own life. And not all, as I think as well, it's important to note that all my successes to date has also been combined with a lot of failure along the way, because you can't fully experience success unless you know failure and learning from failure. And as well as that, I think that all just to note that not all paths to success are linear. So what works for me may not work for you, but you can go in a roundabout way to get to your success point.
Thank you so much. When people want to reach you, Sinead, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can check me out on my website, sineadkane.ie, or even on Instagram at KaneSinead777.
Okay, we'll send them there. I'm so grateful, so humbled, and so honored to having had you here. It's such a blessing. I even feel so much different to when the interview started, because that's what you radiate. As you were saying, you become an inspiration. You, whoever touches greatness or goes for greatness, become an inspiration naturally, because that energy oozes out of us.
Well, but before you go, for your homework for today, I ask of you that today to do something that will nourish your body. So whether that's eating some leafy greens, broccoli, spinach, whatever, to take that into your diet today in terms of your physical and your nutrition. And then in terms of your physical, do something today that does get the heart rate up, and whether going out for a brisk walk or a cycle or a swim or something. And then also bring something into your mind that gives you inspiration, motivation, and so to just make yourself accountable at the end of today. Then ask yourself, what did I do today that helps me grow as a person?
Very wise. And if we keep doing that every day, the effect will be compound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Sinead.
Thanks for having me. I really.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.